Hello everyone, welcome to the War Zone. I'm Scruffy and this is Scruffy Tales. And we're going to take a look at the entire front line and a section that might indicate maybe a new Russian front north of Kupiansk, but we're going to take a look at everything from Tetkino, Sumy, all the way down to Pokrovsk and Zaporizhia. So we're using Andrew Perpetuous map. Mayakovsk 73 hasn't updated for a couple of days, but as you can see here, there is activity along the entire length of the front line, including the border between Russia and Ukraine. So, I mean, Russia is really putting the hurt to the Ukrainians. We're gonna zoom in here on Tetkino and Sumy Oblast. You can see here Russian drone attacks aimed at this border region here in the windbreaks. We saw some Ukrainian a couple of days back. Let's see if we can find those. Here we have a Russian assault into Ukrainian positions. Seems to have been thwarted, and some days before that, didn't we see Ukrainian? Yeah, hang on the 25th. These are like, yeah, several days ago we could see Ukrainian drone strikes in the outskirts here, aimed at Russians trying to push in. This is on the 25th, so quite some time ago. And now we have Russian drone strikes in the area. We can see Ukraine is still in control of these areas, still contesting this factory. Let's see here, when was it? Here we can see how Ukrainian airstrikes have, once again, this is on the 29th, aimed at the outskirts of the factory. Predominantly the airstrikes have been aimed at the factory itself, but now they're striking over here in the center of town instead, indicating that we might have a Ukrainian presence in the factory and they don't want to hit friendly targets. The official map released by Ukraine High Command does not show any Ukrainian advances around Tetkino or over here, but it does show that Ukraine is in control of this part of Kursk. Nothing to indicate these advances that we see on, or this contested area that we see on Andrew's map. But what Ukraine High Command is showing is that Ukraine is in control of this part here. Makes some sense that they've broken in to this small valley. Question is if they have pushed all the way up here into the railroad. Unknown. But we do know that they have made a push here. We do know that they're pushing over here around Tetkino, and it does seem as if they also are in control of this part of the battlefield. Moving over to Sumy Oblast, we have some dead Russians here. We know that Ukraine pushed up here. They had a presence the other day, and let's move ahead. Sorry for that. Here we have, let's go back a day or two. Here we go, Ukrainian infantry presence in this windbreak. Why don't we use the correct dates when we make these updates? And we can see how Ukraine is pushing north of Kindrativka. So Ukraine is applying pressure all around Kindrativka and have been doing so for a couple of days. Still in Andrivka. Front lines are essentially static. But this is interesting. Take a look at this. Massive Russian artillery and airstrikes aimed at this region of Kursk, where we still have Ukrainians in control of some valleys, and Russia is quite clearly trying to deal with this situation. And moving down, we can also see a lot of strikes at Sumy itself. Russia is conducting strikes in and around Belgorod, trying to prevent the Ukrainians from moving in further reinforcements to fortify the border regions. What else? This is interesting though. Let's see, is anything happening? No, nothing really there out of the ordinary. This, however, is interesting. Russia has made a slight push across the border, waving flags in the town of Milove. And pushing out into the surrounding woods. Is this a diversion or is this an actual new front line opening north of Kupiansk, where the Russians might be trying to reach the center of this area so that they can fan out and flank the Ukrainians from behind. Imagine if the Russians push in here towards Veliki Burluk, and from here I guess the idea might be to try and push south to link up with Kupiansk and try and push north to reach Vovchansk. Not unthinkable. We'll see how this plays out. I think that might be a strategy here for the Russians coming in this area here to be able to outflank and create pockets that they can encircle and grind down over time. But on that note, this push has not expanded. I was a bit worried that Russia would keep pushing that once they reached Hulubivka. Doesn't seem to be happening. They seem to have reached these towns but haven't made any real headway after that. Ukraine is holding the line north of Kupiansk, very crucial. Russian artillery aimed at the northern end here of Pyshany. We have Pyshany here. They're striking northern Pyshany as well. Two towns called Pyshany right next to each other, confusing as hell. See if that is an indication that Russia wants to push out this way. Not much else going on down here. Artillery strikes all over the place, as we might expect. Siver's front line is hardly moving at all. You can see here, Russia is struggling pushing through Yablonivka. They've been stuck here forever, and no wonder. This is high ground. The Ukrainians are on the top of the hill looking down into this valley, and they have complete control of Russian movements outside of town. Russia tried to push in this way with a mechanized assault to dislodge the Ukrainians from the high ground, failed, and they are really struggling making headway here towards Yablonivka. We saw massive airstrikes at Chakove and this valley here, made by Russia. And a day or two later, they made this push. Could be that they suppressed the Ukrainians in this valley, and that allowed them to maneuver into this valley by keeping Ukrainians from counterattacking from the north. And they have since almost reached the river and Razina. Here you have a couple of bridges here in the area that they're trying to push out to Novotoretsky and what have you. Let's see if you can see that on the map. If we zoom in, here you have bridges, one bridge across the river, no bridge down here that I can see. Maybe we have something here, right? So Russia wants those bridges so they can come in north of Mirnorad and Pokrovsk. We'll see if they can secure this one bridge down here, or if they will push for the bridges up further north. Here at Novotoretsk and further north still at Chakove. But as you can see, lots of artillery strikes aimed here. Russia wants to push out to this river. We've talked about this before. I got flies all over my screen, god damn it. Not much else happening along the front line. The pro-Russian crowd on social media, they like to highlight this area. This is, as you can see, Russia is spending a lot of firepower to suppress the Ukrainians to allow them to advance, and this area here is one that they're talking about. That is gonna, that is an indication of the Ukrainian collapse. This push here is, if we move back, it is the 5th. Let's move back a month to the 5th of June. This is where Russia was a month ago, and they made it up to Sirka and Tolstoy, right? So 14-15 kilometers in a month. Okay, so you can divide this by 30 to get a feel for how far they advanced on average per day in that month. And so, I mean, on the 8th, and then you start to see things. You can see how they're sending in artillery and rocket strikes to open up the advances on the 11th, 13th, and then you had a breakthrough on the 16th, 17th, right? Now we're on the 19th, trying to get past Bahatur on the 20th. As you can see, then you had some advances in Shevchenko, multiple Shevchenkos in Ukraine. And then on the 28th, you saw they broke through here towards Tolstoy. And then, you know, it's just an extremely slow advance by the Russians over a month. And the pro-Russian crowd, they're calling this a massive breakthrough. It's not. It is slow going as hell. Moving down to the Zaporizhzhia front line. This is interesting. If we move back a couple of days, you can see here how Russia has been advancing. So you had this massive rocket strike, and I said back then probably an indication that we're going to see an advance. And then we saw this advance. Then we got this, another massive rocket strike, airstrike at the small town of Kupiansk. Again, an indication that Russia would probably try and push in. And a day or two later, Russia pushes in. So, you know, these massive artillery strikes, airstrikes, I mean, follows the textbook assault, right? You aim a lot of artillery to subdue, to suppress, and maim or kill a couple of enemies, and then you move in with as much with your own forces to try and overcome those shell-shocked enemy positions, and that is what we're seeing in Kupiansk. But I mean, how far have they managed to push here? In 2 kilometers, and this is back on the 23rd of June, so 2 kilometers in a couple of weeks. I mean, this is, yeah, slow going for the Russians, really slow going. And if we clear all here, and let's remove all of these events to highlight. So this is the massive breakthrough that the pro-Russian crowd is talking about. Zooming out, I'll show you what I'm talking about here. Let's see here. So yeah, this here is the massive breakthrough that the pro-Russian crowd are talking about online all over the place. And when we zoom out, I mean, Ukraine, that as you can see, this is not a massive breakthrough, nor is this. I mean, operationally, yes, that it has an effect on the front line, but it's not a massive breakthrough. It's not a Ukrainian collapsing front line. It isn't. Now, if we're talking a proper breakthrough, then Russia would have pushed through and made it all the way up to Dnipro in a month, and forced Ukraine to abandon all of this territory here in a month or two, right? That is a proper breakthrough. But that is not what we're seeing. We're seeing these small tactical maneuvers, small operational maneuvers, goddamn flies all over the place. That is slowly forcing Ukraine back, absolutely, but I mean, it's a fighting withdrawal, a successive fighting withdrawal, and the Russians are losing, what is it? I think in the first half of this year, they've lost 200,000 casualties, securing 0.5% of Ukrainian territory. Not even 0.5%, 0.25%. And in 2024, as I pointed out, they took 0.5% of Ukrainian territory in this area here and lost 400,000 troops casualties in doing so. And they are on track to repeating 2024, securing 0.5% of Ukraine. Sorry, where was I? Yeah, repeating 2024, securing 0.5% of Ukrainian territory at the end of 2025, and they are on track to suffering 400,000 casualties in 2025, dead and wounded, just like they did in 2024. This is an extremely slow advance, but that might change depending on United States aid. If the United States stops supporting Ukraine, we might see a repeat of what happened at Avdiivka, when the United States withdrew military support for a couple of months. That resulted in a shortage of artillery ammunition for Ukraine, and that allowed Russia to push through at Avdiivka and then push up to Ocheritina, and this push has allowed Russia to move out towards Myrnrad and Pokrovsk. Maybe we will see something similar if the US does not support Ukraine with enough ammunition. Maybe we will see Russia being able to push through towards the Dnipro, and we will see that larger collapse that I was talking about, because the US is not properly supporting Ukraine. Hopefully Europe can step up and fill the gap. It appears as if Ukraine might be able to do, or Europe might be able to do it. In 2025, the United States will produce 1,155mm artillery shells, the primary artillery shell used by Ukraine. Europe will produce in the same time in 2025 2 million artillery shells of the same caliber. So Europe is outproducing the United States in terms of artillery shells. So maybe Ukraine is not as reliant on American support to fix and maintain the front line. And Ukraine is also heavily reliant on drones to inflict casualties, and they produce their own drones. The problem is air defenses around Kyiv and other larger cities that might allow Russia to conduct more terror bombings if Ukraine does not receive American missiles. But hopefully European artillery shell production will help Ukraine hold the line as we're seeing it. Okay, trying to get this thing recorded while being interrupted by the kids non-stop over and over. Oh, Jesus. Anyway. Oh, okay. Where was I? I have completely lost track of what I was talking about. Anyway, yes, it was because the United States did not provide enough artillery for the Ukrainians back in 2024 that allowed Russia to push through at Avdiivka and later reach Ocheritina and stuff like that. But hopefully European arms production has increased to such a level that Ukraine is no longer reliant on American artillery ammunition production. So hopefully that, in combination with Ukraine's own production of drones, they will still be able to hold, even if the Americans are, messing up the flow of weapons going to Ukraine. And like we've said, these are small gains that it takes a long time for Russia to establish them and build them up and exploit them. And since things are moving so slowly, it gives Ukraine time to move around troops behind the lines to reinforce these positions where Russia is trying to make these gains. So if you have a big push and a fast breakthrough, it's more difficult for Ukraine to allocate forces to contain it. But since these breakthroughs are so small, only tactical, and at most operational, on the operational level, that gives Ukraine a lot of time to reposition forces and resources strategically to counter these small gains, and that is what slows down the situation for the Russians. Russia really needs a big, proper breakthrough that Ukraine can't reposition to counter as easily as they've done so far. But with a little bit of luck, Ukraine can maintain this effective defensive line and have this fighting withdrawal and properly grind down the Russians in this war of attrition. Thank you for watching. I hope you found it interesting. I hope I'll see you in the next one. As always, go på marsch, Ukraine, and give them hell.